And joining us today to have a chat is the number one data guru, Kevin De Beer. Kevin, thanks for coming in and helping out.
Thanks, Mark. I wouldn't say I'm the absolute data guru, but data combined with sales, together with Mark's experience, has given us a bit of a winning formula. And we want to share that with you guys out there in the market. So hopefully you find some of the stuff that we got for you today to, pretty interesting, and some stuff you can apply in your own world and your own businesses.
Yeah, so that's exactly our goal, right? It's just to share with you. We've made a whole bunch of activities over the last few months, and we want to share with you what we found works really well, some of the mistakes that we made, and the interesting thing is, it's, the parts where you really gain effectiveness and increase your efficiency is not the areas that we thought, right? So that's why we thought it would be so valuable. So what are we going to cover off today? There's three things really, three micro topics, if you like. So the last one will be tactics. So I'm going to share with you, what are we putting in our emails? What are we saying in our outbound? What does our LinkedIn look like? That sort of stuff. And it's just high level, but I think you'll be able to take away and come up with some new ideas for your own business. The second one is going to be the data piece, which is going to be really important. Kev's going to talk to us through how he prepares the data, and there's some really crazy stuff in there. And then the first one is really going to be about how do you measure your ROI and what should you be doing in relation to your sales development team, because we're seeing some real mistakes there. But what are we going to be talking about? So Kev, walk us through the numbers of what's created this research, if you like.
Yeah, definitely. So just top of the wave numbers, guys. And just to be clear, the data that I'll take you through here is data measured from July to the end of November. So really this financial year. Prior to that, Mark and I were obviously testing a few things out. We crashed a few of our sales dev planes and built a few more, got a few in the sky. So just the top of the waves numbers. So 4,478 dials went out during that period. We sent circa 3,511 emails. We spoke to 264 gatekeepers. We had 1,172 LinkedIn interactions during that time. And we left 1,887 voicemails, and we actually spoke to 784 buying personas, and we popped out 257 text messages. Just on sort of talk times as well. So when we're talking to a buying persona, we spoke to them when they were saying no to our request. We spoke to them for 2 minutes and 14 seconds. Pretty good talk time for a no. And where we got them to a yes, our average talk time was above 4 minutes and 25 seconds. So pretty lengthy talk times when we actually got to them.
Yeah, and I think something that we didn't include in our stats, mate, was the meeting rate. So I think, for every conversation, every 3.5 conversations we had, we pretty much booked a meeting, roughly.
Yeah, definitely. That's in one of our last graphs there.
All right.
One of our big bangs there. No, perfect.
I'm sharing it.
No, I love it. I love it. Yeah, so we'll show you what that metrics looks like.
All right. So the place that I wanted to start, because this is where we're really seeing a lot of mistakes right up front, is, what's the ROI of your team or your SDR or your BDR or BDM function, whatever it is that you call it, like the vehicle that sets meetings and starts new business conversations. And we've been lucky enough to go and talk to businesses, and we know what's happening. And we've created a calculator that I'll share with you, which we probably can't share in the chat because we don't have the chat now. Kevin?
I'll share it in the Q&A. Let's see if I can pop it in there for the guys.
Yep. So what we found is talking to businesses is over the last little while, right? So a lot of you will know that salespeople have been pretty scarce in the marketplace. So wages have pushed up by 20 or 30%, right? And at the same time, because people are scarce, what's happened is sales leaders have taken their foot off the demand. So, like instead of having to book 20 meetings a month, people are saying, well, just book 12. And what they're not doing is they're not doing the calculation to see what that does to your ROI, because they're so focused on maintaining their staff. And in a lot of businesses, what we're seeing is the ROI is way out of kill. It's costing you a real lot of money to get each meeting and each interaction. And when we've sat down and done that with clients, they've been surprised, we've been surprised. So we built this little calculator for you to have a look. It's 7 questions, put your details in there, and it'll spit out a report. it comes to us first. We put some commentary in there, and then we'll send that back to you. And it's really cool little tool that we thought we'd share as a little bit of a thank you for coming along today. And if you're watching this on replay, I'll stick it in the YouTube comments below so you can check it out. But feel free to have a crack at that, because what we're seeing is that more and more of these SDR teams or BDR teams are actually not profitable, and you can see that in the States already, with lots of people being put off, lots of SDR teams being laid off or cut in half. And of course, what that says to me is that someone's now doing the sums as money becomes and the economy becomes tight. People are thinking, well, where should I be saving my money? They're doing the ROI calculation, going, you know what? A bunch of this team is not actually producing a result. It's costing us money. It's not making us money. And that's a bad situation for a sales function. So the first thing to do is just make sure that's not happening to you, because you don't want to be there. Of course, the best way to do that is to fix your ROI, is to increase the amount of meetings and the amount of sales that you get out of the same talent pool, right? Out of the same human resources. So we'll share what we're doing to enable us to be able to do that, to drastically increase our ROI in this competitive market. And, the big part of that, and I was so surprised how much of the data really takes a big part of this. So Kevin, was the first person to come on to sales dev as a service. He owns part of the business. A complete data guru. He's been working in the data field for more than 15 years. Most recently, he was the Chief Revenue Officer for Elion. And if you're like me, you probably best know Elion as Dun & Bradstreet. So he's spent his life, understanding what's available in the marketplace around data and the best way to slice it and dice it. And as a result, what that's done is meant that we've been able to feed our sales team the best data possible. So Kev, I don't want to share any more of your stats and steal your thunder, so I'm going to shut up and hand it over to you.
No, all good. Just something I wanted to add. I've popped that calculator link in the Q&A for you. So click on there, 7 really simple questions, pop them through, and we'll send it through. The results you get back, just to be clear, it's not plugging our business, so we're not recommending there that we take over any functions there. It's actually built in a way that you can benchmark your existing team, or if you think about growing your team, it gives you some tips and tricks in there. And as Mark said, based on his 50 odd years in sales and my 25 years in sales, we'll put some recommendations in there for you as well, just based on that experience and also based on the numbers that we've seen. So it's something really powerful that you can use within your own organization.
I'm not 50 years in sales. Are you kidding me?
Well, you said it's your birthday next week, Thursday. So I was doing some sums yesterday, counting some grey hairs and whatnot. No, all good. So just quickly, 3 levers that I've come up with in this business of ours, basically. So lever number 1 is around ICP and cadence effectiveness. So this is a conversation we have with our customers to understand what their ICP looks like, and we then derive a cadence out of that. I then have a look at the data that's available, do some segmentation of the actual data, and then build an effectiveness calculator based on that. And that, in simple terms, is using those data points that I mentioned up in the previous slide that I flashed up in terms of the numbers there, as well as data from our data suppliers, basically. And what that comes down to is what I want to measure there is buying persona touches to conversations. Show you what that looks like in a minute. Lever number 2 is data performance. So how well does our data perform? And what I want to get to there is a golden record for our SDRs or our agents. And what I measure there basically is the dials it takes to get to a conversation with a buying persona. I'll speak about that shortly. And then lever number 3, a critical lever, is our agent conversation quality, basically, right? So what's the quality of our conversations being had? And I measure that in terms of buying persona conversations to actual meetings booked. Right, so the first lever, as I mentioned, there's cadence effectiveness. And what we're aiming to do here is we're trying to get to an 11 to 1 or better, basically. What I mean by that is 11 touches per buying persona to get to a conversation, basically. And what I mean by a touch is a telephone call, a text message, a LinkedIn reach out. Those will equate to 3 touches, basically. So that's what I mean there. You can see in July we were hovering around 12. September, we done really well. We got down to 9. October, we done 15, basically. This also ties into the type of customers that we're working for as well. So in October, as an example, it took 15 touches to get to a buying persona. One of the reasons for that is we had a customer that we were doing work with that required us to get to the IT department, so head of IT, person running the IT department. And these buying personas are quite guarded by gatekeepers, so we needed to have more touches, a few more with the gatekeepers to actually get to a conversation with the actual buying persona. So hence that number 15 to 1 in October. Number 2 is our data performance. What I want to get to here is 4 to 1 or better. And what I mean by that is 4 dials or better to get to a conversation with a buying persona. A lot of work goes into this space, basically, because what I want to get to here is a golden record. And what I mean by a golden record is if I'm looking to reach out to Sales Development Australia and speak to Kevin De Beer, I want to get, make sure that I've got a LinkedIn profile for him, that his LinkedIn profile states that he works for Sales Development Australia. I want to ensure that his email address is Sales Development Australia. It's not going to a Gmail or a Big Pond or a Hotmail email address. And I want to make sure that the telephone number that I've got is actually attached to Kevin. So when I ring through on that telephone number, I'm actually going to get through to him. And then you've got your others around postal addresses and websites, et cetera, et cetera.
Kevin,
but I want to, yes, Mark.
So just go back a step. So when you say you want to make sure that the phone number is correct, how do you do that? I think this is where this is, like, you just gloss this over, but it's so incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Yeah, so what I do is we actually pick up the phone and call it, right? So call the landline and see if the landline gets through to Kevin, or does it get through to a gatekeeper that I need to get through to Kevin, or does it ring to a mobile and the voicemail says it's Kevin's voicemail, or Kevin picks up, basically. So we do a lot of testing and validating of the data that's provided from our data provider to make sure that golden record belongs to Kevin, basically. And the reason why I want to do that is when our SDRs pick up the phone and start dialing, I can flag to them that this is a golden record and there's a high probability that you're going to be having a conversation with Kevin fairly quickly in your cadence, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Thanks for that.
Yep. So dial through conversation with buying personas. You can see in July we had a figure of 2.5. October we went up to 4.5, and then in November we were down to 1.8, basically. The mix of that is based on sort of the type of customer we're working with, but really comes down to measuring getting to a conversation with a buying persona and making sure that your data is correct. One tip I can give to you here is if you receiving your data from your data provider via an API straight into your CRM, make sure that you've got somebody checking that data, basically. Because if you're serving up data to an SDR and the telephone number doesn't work, it's a dead telephone number, or it rings through to the wrong person, the email bounces, you've basically wasted money on purchasing that data. You've created negativity with your SDR, and you're potentially driving the wrong metrics, basically. So you could be chasing higher dial rates as opposed to actual, chasing conversations with buying persona. So a lot of that comes down to issues with your actual data that you're presenting to your team. Email performance, just quickly here, what you're having a look at here is very simply emails opened versus not opened. So the number down below on each of those bars is not opened. So in August, for every 6 emails that were sent, 5 weren't opened, 1 was opened. And you can see in October that dropped down to 2 to 1, basically. So for every 3 that were sent out, only 2 weren't opened and every 1 was open. So quite a good result there. And Mark's going to speak to some of the tactics we used to actually achieve that in October through to November, basically.
So Kev, I've got a question from Peter. Right. He wants to know who's the best data supplier?
Right.
My answer was it depends, but
yeah. So I actually done a lot of work testing. I think it was nearly 12 data suppliers out in the marketplace. And the short answer is there's no one data supplier that's going to give you all the data you require. What I found is depending on who your target audience and who your customer is, you must probably going to need to use a combination of at least 2 and potentially 3 to get to a golden record status for your SDR team. I'm more than happy to share those results in summary format. I've shared that with a few of our customers already that asked that exact same question. But I think that's even a topic for another conversation. But more than happy to help you. Short answer is there's no one supplier that's going to give you a golden record across all of your projects, basically.
Yeah.
I hope that helped.
Yeah, well,
not really. Right. So the last lever is conversation quality, guys. So what I'm measuring here is buying persona conversations that gets us to a meeting, right? So we want to aim for 4 to 1 or better, basically. So for every 4 conversations, we want to be landing a quality meeting for our customers. And as I mentioned, our average talk time to a no is 2 minutes and 14 seconds. And our average talk time to a yes, where we secure a meeting, is 4 minutes and 25 seconds, right? So in the no, it's a fairly long conversation to be had to a no, but we walk away with something in the no, some important piece of information that we can feed back to our customer, or permission to do something else. Call back in 6 months, send a LinkedIn request, send an email, etc., etc. So we walk away with something in a no, 2 minutes, 14 seconds, and our yeses are 4 minutes, 25. We capture a heap of information that's very valuable for first quality meetings for our customers. So looking at the data there, you can see in October, we had three conversations got us to a meeting. In September, it was 6, nearly 7 conversations got us to a meeting. Pitfall we fell into in September is we thought the more dials we made, the more conversations we're going to have. So we thought our data was pretty crash hot, and you can see in the numbers there, never eventuated to that. And the reason that actually happened is once we had a debrief with the team, is we use a term internally called commission breath. Got a bit of a commission breath where we ramped up the dials, had heaps of conversations, and tried to secure as many meetings as possible, basically. And what we had forgotten is slow down to speed up, basically. Slow the conversation down to have a quality conversation that then secures a quality meeting for our customers.
Yeah, good stuff, Kev. So is there anything else you wanted to share there in the data piece, or?
No, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, good job. So what you'll be able to see now is the amount of effort that Kevin goes to get that data piece right is creating a platform for us to be super successful, providing the tactics and the conversations are right? But the other part of it is, because it's so clean, it means that we can be really focused on what we think is going to work, and we can target our customers more directly. So everybody talks about moving away from metric selling, or metric outbound. So, make $100 a day or $90, whatever it is, right? Whatever that number is. And I still see people talking about 90. I had somebody the other day I was talking to who had to make $90 a day. And what frustrates me there is there's no conversation around how many conversations they're having or how the quality of the conversation. So what the sales leaders need to do is focus on what's the best way for us to give the best data to our most valuable resource. And the most valuable resource is the agents. We call SDRs agents in our business. So if you've got the data right on the client side, so you can be really confident that you're going to reach out to them and you've got the right segments, you can talk to them about the right things, you can really narrow it down. And at the same time, if you've got the data right and you know that they're going to pick up, or you're likely to get through, then the people that are making the phone calls are having a much better day, right? So they're sending emails or whatever it is that they're doing, whatever channel they're using, because they know that 1 in 1.8 dials, they're going to have at least one conversation, right? So, and that was the November data. So that makes it much easier for you to be able to help your team feel successful, be successful, and get great results. And going back to the ROI piece, the more conversations that you're having, that's where the value comes in. And then the more meetings that you're going to book. So, our team, when we're going well and we're hitting 25, 30 meetings a month, right? Most teams I see that I speak to aren't hitting anywhere near that. And of course, once you get to that sort of level, that's where your ROI starts to come right down, and it allows you to be pretty comfortable as a sales leader. And as an SDR or as an agent, as we call them, you're in a pretty comfortable position because you're making good money, you're hitting your quota, and life's pretty good, right? So any other questions there, Kev? I can see some stuff coming in.
Yeah, so there's a question around data providers typically charge X per user or per credit, basically. How much percentage cost do we add per user for the effort to validate the data?
Well, that's a question for you. How much?
Again, this comes down to basically what you're wanting to measure, right? So if you're happy to pay whatever it is, 50 cents or $1 for data from your data provider, and you're chasing number of dials for your teams to do, you're not really bothered about spending that amount of money on your data. But if you're measuring the amount of conversations your SDRs are having with a buying persona, and then the quality off the back of that, if you think about the three levers, you might want to invest more effort, which is actually money, because it's a resource you're going to have to deploy to validate data, right? So one is full rates of data. So is the data all there? Mobile, email, address, LinkedIn. And two is the validation of that data to get to a golden record, basically. My recommendation would be, if it's a true SDR team and function you're setting up, invest, the time and the resource to actually do the data validation for your team, basically. Failing to do that, you're going to be chasing the wrong metric, and your ROI is going to decrease.
Yeah, and when you think about my experience of what other teams are doing, they're trying to save money on the data so they can employ more people. You're actually better off employing less people, spending more money on the data, and giving those fewer people high quality data so they're more successful, and you'll end up with a better result overall. And that's what the whole ROI discussion, I think, comes in. Think about what happens typically in most organizations. Somebody gets, marketing supplies you with a lead list of 500 people that downloaded some white paper in the last 6 months and said, these are warm leads. Just because somebody's downloaded the white paper doesn't mean they're going to pick up the phone, right? Even though they might have opted in. And so we're just making it really hard, I think, for our SDRs or our BDRs, agents, whatever you want to call them, unfairly. And I think the work needs to be done further up. Well, what we're seeing is the more work we do further upstream, the better the result, the easier it is to retain agents, the happier they are, the happier our clients are. So this is what we're finding is critical. And then because we've got that data right, it allows us to be really targeted on the front end when it comes to tactics. So let's talk about outreach tactics and what we've been using. So I'm only going to share a couple of here because I could spend 2 hours talking about tactics.
Yeah, and that comes down to a question somebody asked: how frequently are you amending the messages in emails to get those open rates? Good question.
Yeah, as soon as it doesn't work. So we like to measure things in batches of 25 as a minimum, preferably more. And we send a batch through a cadence. So I'll share a cadence in a moment. And let's say that 50 people go into a cadence, and for one agent, that might be 2 weeks worth of work, for example. And then we validate, we measure that at the end. And if those numbers, open rates, response rates, etc., are too low, well, then we'll make changes. We've been pretty lucky in that we've only had to make a couple of changes, and we give the agents a little bit of creativity as well. So tactics, this slide's been up for a while. The reality is, sales leaders are busy, salespeople are busy, so we try to take shortcuts, and we're trying to take shortcuts with tactics, and that means we're Googling to try and find what's the best cold call opener, what's the best email sequence, what's the best cadence. And what happens is everybody ends up using the same thing, and it makes it really hard for us to break through. The first thing we need to do is get our prospects' attention, and the only way that we're going to do that, or the best way for us to do that, is to do something different. And I don't mean different as in weird, and I'll show you an example, because if we do the same thing as everyone else, we can only possibly get the same results as everybody else. So here's a couple of examples that we've been using. So, for example, in one batch, we sent a coffee mug with a couple of Tim Tams inside it, and then we call off the back of that, 3 or 4 days after we know that they've got it. In another instance, and this one's working really well, this is responsible for the highest open rates and the highest response rates. We get a cartoon that's customized. So I get somebody to make this for us with a little bit of direction from myself. And then we have this little space here that we can then use and customize. So every client would get one that would be their name and their business name. And then we send that to them in the email, and then we call off the back of that custom cartoon. In this campaign, we're talking to business owners about which direction do they want to go. Are they looking to sell their business and get out of their business, or are they looking to grow their business? So we've called this the fork in the road campaign. So we created a cartoon with a business owner who's at the fork in the road. And then this allows us to be a lot more upfront and creative when it comes to trying to get a conversation. And of course, you probably know about the Venn diagram over here. Justin Michael, of course, is responsible for that. And that does pretty well for us. We typically send this in one of our follow-up emails. But for today, we're just going to really concentrate on the custom cartoon and the sending the Tim Tam strategy. So the first thing that I want to share with you is cadences, right? So a lot of the cadences that I'm seeing coming back to us and when we talk to our clients are marketing cadences. And so I did a quick Google to find some cadences, and I think a lot of the times they come, well, I know a lot of the times they come up as, world's best cadence, or this cadence is a B2B cadence that works, and it's being supplied by sales enablement companies that sell you sales tech, right? And have a look at this dark example here. You've got a 60-day or 6-month campaign that you couldn't possibly manage that on your own. And I think that's the whole process there. They're trying to sell you the tech. They're not going to sell you the best cadence. And the cadence that we see that outperforms is significantly different to this. Have a look. You've got a phone call on day 1, a phone call and a voicemail on day 4, and your next phone call is on day 32. That's not a sales cadence, folks. That's a marketing nurturing cadence, right? And we see a lot of businesses going light on the cadence, again, because they want to make sure that their sales team are comfortable doing the outreach. What that means is that they're making less and less meetings, and that means that your ROI is coming down, right? So all of these things, when they're not done correctly, impact your ROI of your sales team, right? So this is a cadence that we use for the Tim Tam thing, for the Tim Tam campaign, right? And you'll notice we had, this campaign was way lower, had response rates way lower than our 11 touches. And you can see day 1's got 5 touches on it, right? LinkedIn, phone call, voice message, text message, email. Day 2, phone call, voice message, reply to the same email. Day 5, email, back to LinkedIn. Day 6, phone call, voice message, text message, and reply to the email on day 5. And then that was it, right? So this is the type of cadence, and our cadences don't vary a lot. They vary somewhat. We typically might go a little bit longer. This is quite short. So we might then go day, 8 and day 9. And we're getting great responses. No one's saying that we're going too hard, because if you go to this sort of cadence, you're basically losing any opportunity for people to see some sort of prospecting pressure to see that you're actually interacting with people. So have a look at your own cadence and see if it's this level of frequency and this level of volume. We're getting fantastic results off this, which again means that we can feed more fresh leads into our SDRs more quickly, which helps them then get a great result without being a real drain. We don't need to have a sales engagement platform to manage, 4 attempts across 6 days. It's pretty easy to do. All right, so what do those touches look like? So LinkedIn is an absolute ghost town for our team. So I can still get good results on LinkedIn, but I've spent years building up a network with 10,000 followers. If that's not you, which is very likely, then we're finding it very difficult to get anything happening here. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, Mark, so assuming you're connected, or you can send a message, hey, Mark, I can see blah, 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 just going to send you an email. Have a look at that. The subject line is X. So think about the hierarchy of communication. So, the best channel to chat is face-to-face. Next one is probably Zoom. After that is certainly a phone call, except, and then an email, and LinkedIn chat, for example, is down here. So what you want to try and do is always try and move up into the next level of hierarchy of communication channel. Okay, something that's really interesting I want to share with you here, thanks to Stuart Turner. What he's found is that it's 3.5 days on average from connection request to accept. So if you're doing what I'm doing here in this B2B cadence, and I've only just recently found this out, as in sending a connection request and expecting that to impact your outreach on the next day or two, then that's probably not going to happen. So that's really interesting too. So what does our cold call opener look like? It's just the same as any old phone call that we would have, right? So we've dumped all the permission stuff. We don't do the, can I have 27 seconds to tell you why this is this is for you. Hey, this is a cold call. Feel free to hang up. We don't do any of that stuff, right? We just say, as if somebody was calling Kevin, I wanted to talk to you about sales dev real quick. Can you help me out? And we're finding that works really well.
There's a question just tied into that, Mark, around quality conversation versus a non-quality conversation.
Yep.
At what point do we decide quality versus non-quality? And I think we use that briefing sheet of yours, basically, that I think you've shared in some of your training as well as one of the indicators around that.
Yeah, so we've got a 4-stage self-coaching model that allows you, and if you want access to this, shoot me a message, I'll send it to you, it's no problem. Like if you get past your opener, you get into qualification and they're actually providing you some information backwards and you're having a bit of backwards and forwards, then that's a quality conversation. Whether it converts or not converts doesn't really matter in relation to the quality of the call. What we're finding is if we can focus on the conversation and the quality of the conversation, like people actually getting to a two-way backwards and forwards, we can't control whether they want to take a meeting. We can't control whether they need whatever it is we're calling about. We can't control whether they've just bought the competitor and they're locked in for a 2-year contract. All that stuff's outside of our control. What we can control is the activities that we make, the quality of the data that we serve up to our agents, and then the questions and the interactions that they have inside that conversation. Now, if that conversation at that point goes to a yes or a no, it doesn't really matter. If they've had a great chat, that's the measure of success as far as we're concerned. So dump the cheesy cold call opener and just start. I know this is hardly breakthrough stuff, but this is what's really working for us. All right. And, to give you an example, the Tim Tam stuff. So we just ring up and say, hey, Gary, I'm the guy who sent you the Tim Tams last week. Did you eat them all yourself or did you give some of them away? Right. And what happens? People give a chuckle. Hey, and then we set an enormous amount of meetings by using this strategy. Right. And these are, who was the target market here, Kev? There was 2, wasn't there?
Yes, there was 2. So one was people in the finance department, so senior people in finance and pretty high up, so heads of GMs, CFOs. And then on the other side was people in IT, so chief information officers, heads of IT. So pretty senior people on 2 sides of the business, and the response rates were actually put a smile on our face. On one side, we were getting responses via text messages, saying, yep, we want to meet with you. And the other side, they would deny having received it. But, you have a conversation with them and then they start laughing. They actually did receive it. So, yeah, very interesting project that was.
Yes. And of course, Kevin and I always do some of the calls in each campaign so that we can get real world feedback and help make any changes. And I remember making phone calls for this and people were saying, mate, I haven't been in the office for 3 weeks. I don't know what you're talking about, but tell me why you're ringing. Like you could have almost done the campaign without sending the Tim Tams. That would not be in the spirit of things, but just the fact that you're opening with that opener was enough to get people to have a chat. And something that you said there, I wanted to reiterate. I personally had CIOs of large organizations, very large organizations, setting meetings with me via text message. They wouldn't pick up their phone. They wouldn't respond to the email, but they'd end up saying, mate, I love the Tim Tams. I'll be happy to take a meeting just off the back of that via text message. So, with CIOs, I thought that was incredible.
Yeah. And there's a question in there that says, what's the average size of the businesses you're going after? So across the clients that we've had this year, we had ASX 200 businesses that we were going after, right through to your sort of medium-sized businesses down to businesses with 20 plus employees. So sort of 10 to 20 right up to the big guys, basically. We have projects across all of those.
Yep. Yeah. So this particular campaign, the Tim Tam campaign, I think you'd describe as mid-market.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So definitely in that much more than 50 million, but not in the 500 million or billion space. So, but lots of household names that you would know. So voicemail and text. So if you've been following me for a while, you'll know this has been my standard voicemail and text play. Same thing, regardless of how you deliver it. And all we're trying to do is that hierarchy, right? Again, completely understand you're not picking up from a number that you don't know. I'm going to send an email now with a subject line, Tim Tams. Check that out, right? Just really easy language, and directing people to the next level of communication. Now, you might get the CIO who won't communicate via email, but will communicate via text message. You just have to accept the highest level they'll let you get to, but we should always be trying to push up. And so if you look at this, okay, and then we send the email, this is the 5 out of 11 touches. So it's really easy to get to those 11 touches really quickly that we know is going to get us a response, right?
And there's a question there. What's the best thing to do if the email has not been opened for a month?
Well, I wouldn't be still chasing them after a month.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, just back to that question. If you think about our cadence and our 11 touches, and pretty much in the example we showed you there, within 6 days, and we've done sort of 11 to 12 touches basically. So as Mark said, it's a hierarchy. So we don't just send out an email first and then wait and then do a text message. We want to get to a quality conversation. So we want to build that hierarchy to get to the conversation basically.
Yep, creating some urgency. I can't think of too many scenarios where, sending endless emails and phone calls once a week from a month or 2 months is worthwhile. We just haven't seen that work for us. We find that taking a much more, let's call it aggressive approach, is really working well. So, and then the whole thing just stays on the same talking points, right? So the email is just, hey, mate, I sent you a bunch of Tim Tams. Hopefully you've got those. We're trying to have a chat about, whatever it was. What's the best way for us to catch you? That's the email. So, and the subject line, Tim Tams, right? Custom cartoon, subject line, fork in the road. Hey, Mark, we know that, business owners have been in business in X location, over 12 years in this industry, for example, are often finding themselves at a fork on the road right now. Do they double down on growth, or do they try and figure out what an exit plan is? Would love to have a chat about you selling your business sometime in the future. What's the best way to catch you? That's the email, right? And then, of course, that allows us to then call people up and say, hey, I sent you a custom-made cartoon 2 days ago. Did you get it? Right? So if they're, this is what our day 2 phone call sounds like. So it sounds simple, but as soon as you get away and start to try and be different, deliberately different, the response rates are incredible. And it makes it really easy for a conversation for either you or your agents to have. And as soon as people start talking to you, you'd be surprised how easy it is to find out whether they've got a need or not. And then it's a simple matter of yes or no. We've talked about email strategy before, so I'll just share this here for everybody. Easy CTA is not asking for a meeting. Make sure it's super short and focused on them, and the same talking points that you would have in your script. So the summary here is, make sure your ROI is okay, right? So are you asking your SDRs to hit enough meetings? Check that against, what it's really costing you, and use that calculator that Kevin shared to check it out. Data is king, queen, joker, ace, and everything. Most people aren't using their data correctly. The better you clean up your data and send it to your team, the easier it is. And then if you make your outreach even just a little bit interesting, you're going to see you're going to get great results. So I think we're right on 40 minutes there, Kev. 39 minutes as promised.
39 minutes, yeah. I just want to have a look at the chat quickly and see if there's any other questions.
If you haven't, check out the calculator. We're going to put some commentary in there and send that back. If you've got Q&A for us, you want to ask us some questions, we can probably go into a bit more detail now. I'm not in a hurry. So what have you got?